Welcome to the Inspiration North podcasts, inspiring stories from inspirational people and how they found their passion, their true north. I'm James Eves.
And I'm Michelle Minikin, and this is the Inspiration North podcast.
Today's episode, there's nothing in life you have to do with Nevil Tynemouth. We talk about having everything and not enjoying it, the importance of doing things you really love when you have downtime, and choosing a career based on the company car on offer.
Nevil, director at New Results, is an international speaker, author and co-creator of The Psychology of Consumer and Seller Behaviour, with 30 years of commercial acumen and experience. Nevil delivers high-impact business techniques for organisations, teams and individuals. He gives you real-world business advice about growing and developing your business and your people. He was involved in the sales launch of two of the UK's most familiar brands in Dyson and BlackBerry. He built a significant sales coaching programme for BT. He supports a range of businesses from start-up to international organisations in professional services through to IT and technology.
So then, Nevil, thanks for joining us. Did you know what you wanted to be when you grew up?
Absolutely 100%. Absolutely nailed this as a kid. I knew exactly what I wanted to do and what I wanted to achieve. I was clearly destined to be a Formula One driver, a racing driver. That was exactly my path. Mm-hmm. Clearly, bits of that have worked and bits of that haven't worked. But also, one of the things that I look back on, at about 14, I started my own business. Mm-hmm. And actually, at the time, I didn't realise, it's only when you reflect, when you look back as a kind of grown-up. I'm almost a grown-up these days, apparently. When I look back and think, actually, do you know what? I really genuinely wanted my own business. I just didn't understand at the time that was a possibility or something you could do. It was just everybody went to school and got a job. So yeah, my kind of childhood, kind of as a kid, the dream and the aspiration was always to drive in Formula One and drive a racing car. But in reality, I suppose I was bitten by the bug of self-employment back then. I started a car washing round for me and my friend. Mm-hmm. We made £20 in the first day, which was like, God, we were like kings. Yes, absolutely. Can't believe how rich we were.
That's a lot of pick and mix, isn't it?
Oh, that's, trust me, yes. Exactly. What didn't accidentally fall into your bag got paid for, and that's, £20 buying an awful lot.
$1.50, one for the mouth, one for the bag.
Absolutely. But I think things fell down because I tried to franchise that. And as a 13-year-old, I didn't have a great grasp of franchising law. And two mates effectively just stole my next round because I found all the business. And again, I suppose, back then, a bit like now, a bit gobby, a bit talky. I'm happy to go and chat with folks. And I was the only 13-year-old in my crowd that would happily knock on folks' doors going, "Excuse me, mister, do you want your car washed? Like, yes. We'll give it a wash and a wax and everything, like we're dead clever." And that's what we did. We washed cars, we waxed them, we cleaned them inside and out. We did all that stuff. And while it was really quite hard work looking back, washing lots of cars in a day, it was really good fun and learned lots doing that. Yeah.
That's amazing.
It is.
I need to learn that skill.
Reminds me of, what's that, of washing cars?
Asking people if they want business.
Oh, yes. Things start very young with me, that's yes. But that's, yeah.
Reminds me of, it would have been Cubs and Scouts, wasn't it? Bob a job?
Oh, yes, Bob a job,
yeah. Same. You got any jobs, mister, you want doing? Or wash your car, cut the grass, whatever.
Yeah. I think, I'm like a lot of people, I suppose. I like being busy. I don't like sitting around. I'm a kind of a get up and get on with it and deal with it kind of person. So, looking back, that was kind of a nice starting place for me. But like everybody, and, having listened to some of the previous guests, you kind of fall into this pattern of, well, you go to school and they teach you how to be employed. And that's what they did. I remember, hey, I'll show my age a bit. At university, there was a discussion about self-employment. I remember it was kind of one afternoon. It was a guest lecturer, and we did an exercise about running a taxi firm. Mm-hmm. And the big bit of output was, hey, you forgot to pay yourselves, therefore you've all gone broke, therefore self-employment's really bad, so which of the banks do you want to go and work for? And it was like, oh my God, we were just steered and pushed and cajoled towards being employed through school and university. And while that's great, it didn't really suit me. And I think I found that little bit of kind of almost resistance and difficulty in that space because I didn't want to play that game.
It makes me think of, I don't know if you've seen my posts about the Pie Project charity.
Yes.
Which is really bringing in enterprise STEM skills into
Yes.
at a primary age.
Yeah.
And I mean, if we were at the awards, when was that? 3 weeks or so ago, and to see 8-9-year-olds, the ideas they had. I mean, they all interview for roles. The school I was at, Diamond Hall in Sunderland, I mean, they invested £27 of their loan from the charity and turned it into £310.
Sign them up quick. They're the kids that you want. That's it.
And you think each had a role. They were making these bookmarks that were all personalised, and there's like, where's all the blue glitter gone? Someone's used all the bloody blue glitter.
That sounds just like our office, actually. Yes, that's standard.
So it became, right, well, we need a production supervisor, and we need a design supervisor to make sure that the unicorn has 2 eyes, not 3 eyes, and we're not wasting materials. And
You don't want to be messing about with 3-eyed unicorns. That's just a nightmare.
And it was just to see what they'd learned from that primary research, the marketing that they did, which was catering for different ages. The 3-year-olds don't need many words, it's more images. And then the sales side, order forms, let's have a process. And you think, this is fantastic. And they're only 9 years old, so I'd like to think when they get to an age of, well, I've left school.
When
and
can we hire them?
Well,
yes, 9, 10, it's fine, yes.
maybe we can do like the football academies where we put an option on someone and sign them up.
Imagine, yes, I've found a budding entrepreneur and signed them up already.
We found the one we want.
Yes.
And
We podcasted with her. She's mint.
Oh, there you go. That's perfect. That's even better. Yes.
she'll either be the next prime minister or
Kingpin.
yeah. And just to see those skills, that's the sort of thing I think you need to see before leaving school, where you say, well, why didn't you set up a business? Or I want to be a hairdresser, or I want to be a marketer, or whatever. And it's, I did that when I was 8 or 9. Yeah, we can do that.
And I've mentioned this to folks before, and I think it's fantastic. And that's a bit that we need now. We need education to go, actually, how do we get entrepreneurs set up? And we've talked to colleges and we've talked to universities about this. And actually, we're seeing more and more of this. Colleges and universities saying, actually, employment's one route and one outcome. Mm-hmm. But certainly, universities and a little bit colleges are now saying, well, actually, how do we prepare people to be entrepreneurs? What skills can we give them? And you know what? If they go on to be employed, having a whole bunch of entrepreneurial skills isn't going to hold people back. It's not like, oh, well, God, you're like an entrepreneur. That's going to be the nightmare. Yes. It's not. They're really positive skills to have.
Yeah.
I think the bit that challenged me when I was a kid, my only reference point of anybody being self-employed within my friends and family and all the rest of it, and I'm just checking I'm not kind of, was my granddad, who I didn't really know, but I was told he used to run his own motorbike shop and it had gone bust and he'd lost all his money. And it's like, that's your only reference point of running business. So, running your own business, bad. Being employed and having a stable job for life. A job for life is what you need.
Job for life, and then you get a mortgage.
Yes. And it's that fascinating bit. We all follow this path and go, yes. So that's a really big piece for me.
So what effect then did that have on, I don't know, choosing subjects at school or going on to university? Was that the car washing experience? Did that have any influence on that?
It did, actually, yeah. And school, and I don't share this very often, but I'm going to be dead honest about it. School was a real challenge for me. School was a massive challenge. When I transferred from juniors to senior school, that's definitely showing my age. I was shocked to find that my parents had decided to move me away from all my friends and move me to a school 5-6 miles away, which was, okay, let's deal with that. I have one person I know there, that's fine. One person I'd been at the same school with. The disadvantage was my dad was deputy head there. So we started off, and this was before I even got to school, and the conversation went along the lines of, my dad took me to one side and said, you're going to get access to some privileged information around the dinner table, which I did, and I learned, and I still maintain this now. If I hear stuff in confidence, it stays in confidence. I'm really good at that. But he was really clear, and he said to me, if any point during your school career you get brought to me for anything at all, I will expel you on the spot. So, okay, that made me really think. At which point my mother interjected and said, if he expels you on the spot, I will be straight to school to complain. What do I do with this? How on earth do I deal with this? And then actually, through my through my school choices, kind of O-levels and A-levels, my dad eventually became headmaster of the same school. Yeah. So I was in this fantastic situation where there was a very strange relationship with teachers. and it really influenced the kind of things that I wanted to choose and how I want to operate and where I wanted to go. And there was clearly some teachers that my dad really liked, but didn't necessarily like me, and vice versa. And it's just some really interesting things happen. And I remember we went away between O-levels and A-levels, and I'd mapped out, I think with some guidance, physics, maths, and biology. And I came back and went, do you know what? I really want to do economics. So I did economics, and we had a really quite inspirational economics teacher who was really quite, I suppose, innovative. He challenged us. He made us think. He was quirky. He made stuff memorable. We had a great relationship. The whole class and him, he was a really unusual character, but really made you think about things. And I think that was partly influenced by the fact that I knew I wanted to be in business in some way, shape or form. And, perhaps biology wouldn't serve me that well. I think on reflection, I should have dropped physics. I've got a very clever brother who's very clever at physics. Yeah, he's the bright one. He got all the brains in the family. And I just kind of was pushing that box of, well, physics would be good for you. Well, it's not really. I really want to do stuff I enjoy. And I wish I'd done biology. I enjoyed it. And the economics kind of gave me a bit of an insight or some thoughts, and that kind of led me to, economics at university.
Because it tees you up, doesn't it? It's I often say, unless you're actually studying to be something very specific, you want to be a GP, okay, well, you're going to need sciences and you'll need maths. If it's something you enjoy, often school is more prove your level of intelligence, get some grades, and then move on to the next thing, and no one will ask you about your GCSEs at a certain point. Same with A-levels, even a degree at some point, isn't it? No one looks.
It's almost irrelevant, and that's the fascinating piece now. I look back, and it's a great learning experience, and university was a great learning experience. I was very sociable. Yes, that says everything. But actually, and that is a kind of a flippant point. But actually, I learned an awful lot of life skills, and I think that bit about learning to interact, engage. I worked through all my university, 3 years at university, built some great relationships and great friends, and you learn that bit about being out your depth and learning new stuff and learning to cope. And I think that's really useful. I just didn't engage with the course as much as I should have done.
What was it you studied then? Something
economics.
It was economics.
Yeah,
okay.
Economics. And I remember, and this is really pertinent at the minute, I remember I was offered an option in first year. Neville, do you want to do some additional subjects? And we think either Italian or Russian would be good for you. If you take Italian and do well, you might be able to study for a year in Italy. I went, well, obviously I'll do Italian. And I was atrocious at Italian. I really couldn't speak Italian at all. I did pick up a handful of words in Italian. Pizza, that's a good one. And my favourite Italian word, which is scoiattolo.
I don't know what that is.
Squirrel.
So
if anybody needs a squirrel pizza in Italy, I'm your man.
Maybe in rural Italy, there probably is.
Yeah, there probably is, yes. And squirrel's actually quite tasty. I've eaten squirrel once or twice. And of course, yes, and there's a whole other story. But it was that little piece again, and I failed my Italian, and the feedback was, well, if you failed your Italian, you can't continue with your economics degree. Like, well, hang on, I just did Italian for fun. And I had to battle my way through a resit to continue. So I did 3 years of economics, at which I kind of was there, but only just. I kind of scraped through in the end. And actually, in fairness, at the very end of my degree, I was very poorly. I went to hospital straight after my finals. Everybody else went out in a party. I went straight to hospital for a week, which was lovely. But I didn't really engage. I didn't really get it. And actually, you can't change. And I know we're going to probably get to a point where what would you tell yourself when you're younger? Because that's a great thing to talk about. But you can't change stuff. So it was a great learning experience. But I do wonder in hindsight if I went a more vocational route and did something more hands-on, whether it'd be further ahead. And so one of the places I worked at was Comet, part-time. And the manager of the store, I think, was only about a year older than me. And we always said at the time, because I worked there a couple of years at university, said, it would be really interesting in 5, 10, 15, 20, 25 years' time to keep in touch, to see where our careers have gone and how much university has benefited you and how much it's benefited me not going by being and getting the experience. And I think that's the bit for me now. I see lots of people who have lots of education, but not much in the way of life or human skills. And it's that little piece about, and we, enterprise and kids. And we were talking the other day, and I said this was pertinent about the Italian. We've just been to see my youngest nephew in Italy, who's had exactly the same opportunity as me, except he was clever and he did really well at Italian. And he's just studied in Bologna. So he's had a year in Bologna, which is fantastic. But it's that little bit about, I think people could do really well with having a job at school and interacting. And we said it should almost be mandatory that kids have to have a spell working in a shop dealing with the general public, or working behind a bar and dealing with the general public, because that's such a learning piece.
Or working in the reception of a job centre in a particularly deprived part of Middlesbrough when I was 16. That was fun. Bulletproof glass and everything. It was great. The police used to jump out on job seekers.
It's not the job centre scenario, but I was very fortunate. The first ever employed role I had was for the most successful restaurant chain in the world.
Oh, McDonald's.
Yeah. I flipped burgers. But what was really interesting, because, I was 16 and a bit, the youngest age you could work. And what was great was we had a bouncer. So we had McDonald's in South Shields. I remember on a Saturday night, they used to have 4 police cars parked in a little square outside of us, one of which we knew was armed response because they told us. And we had a bouncer. And, you learn an awful lot about trying to deal with people at 16, 17 when they are very drunk and very insistent that they get, no pickles on their hamburger, whatever it might be.
With no pickles.
Yes. Well, you're 15 deep at the counter and people screaming and yelling, could I have that with some extra mayonnaise and a bit of... Yeah, of course you can. Scrape it off. But
Wash it.
Yes. But again, we've got friendships, and I've got, bunches of folks that I work with there that I'm still really good friends with now. There's friends of ours that got married that met each other there however many years ago. It was a great learning experience.
It's interesting as well, McDonald's, in terms of the business of McDonald's too. I was at university doing my masters with a chap who was the manager of McDonald's. So he was doing his Oxike masters at the same time, and just talking about Hamburg University.
Oh, yeah.
I was thinking, who's the idiot here? I'm living on student loans doing my masters, and he's on like 40k a year.
Yep.
And
it's one of those and again, you look back on stuff. It was hard work. It was unsociable hours. Sometimes I wouldn't get until 3 a.m. because by the time you shut up and clean and all the rest of it. But you learned the process. You learned the kind of structure of work. You learned some stuff about business, which is quite nice. And actually, you saw how a major organisation had absolutely everything nailed down. There wasn't anything that wasn't thought of, that didn't come with a form or a process or a way of doing it. Even down to stupid stuff. It still frustrates me now. If I ever, not that I ever have McDonald's these days, ever, but when I go in, we were always told that bags had to be double folded, so I have 2 seams on them when they're presented to you, and always presented to the customer. And now they just scrunch the top and hand it me, and I deliberately take it off them and double fold it and walk away, because it's a process, and the process should be the bag should look fantastic. Is that a bit sad? Is that like?
No, I totally get that. It reminds me, I used to have at university, I had a job at W.H. Smith. So we was in the multimedia department in the Metro Centre.
Yeah.
So it was all the CDs, the DVDs, and
all the stuff that we don't buy anymore.
We don't buy anymore. But I would, even up until recently, I still go into shops and I'm still straightening DVDs in HMV or wherever, just because it's ingrained now.
I had a stint working at a fantastic organisation who sold greeting cards. And I find myself, when I'm looking to buy a card for a birthday or an anniversary, whatever it might be, I am kind of unconsciously straightening and finding the right envelopes for other stuff. It's like, by the time, well, that looks a good display now. Like, oh my God, it's just you fall back into it. Yeah. Yes.
Brilliant.
So.
Brilliant. Okay, so.
Yes.
You left university.
Yeah, so don't come back really. Yes, you've had enough of you.
What did you do next?
Well, this is where, and I'm really proud of this. I had a really structured, I know it's a challenge. People don't have a plan when they leave university. I don't have a direction of travel. And I absolutely had this nailed on. And I look back at this and think, I'm surprised that I was that focused and had such a great plan. And my plan was, at the end of the university, who's going to give me the best company car? And that was it.
Racing car driver.
Yes. It's like, who's going to give me a company car and will they employ me? And that's as sad when I look back and go, that's how I based my
Who gave
thinking.
you it?
It's a firm that no longer exists, unfortunately. They were based in Peterborough, a firm called Pact, and they were part of RS Components, so quite a big firm. And what's really nice is, so we're recording this today, there's folks that I met there back in 96. God, that's a million years ago.
It's not that long.
That's a long time ago. And we still get together every quarter for a social. So we have unfortunately, there's just 6 of us this weekend, but there's normally 10 of us get together every quarter at somebody's house for, a couple of shandies and a bite to eat.
Yep.
And I went off there and they gave me a fabulous white Escort.
Wonderful.
L198TEU. Fabulous car it was. It was the most terrible thing on the planet. But it was a company car, so hey, you couldn't complain.
Was it fast?
Fastest thing in the world, company car. Wow, yeah, it's not mine. I don't pay the bills to repair it or the tyres or the brakes or anything.
Never saw fifth gear.
I don't think it had a fifth
Probably
gear.
didn't have one, no.
It didn't have a fifth gear. Let's not go too mad here. Yes. It was, I think, an Escort 1 litre Popular Minus. It was like, yes, what bits can we take off to make it look even worse? It was fabulous. And, a fantastic experience working in that organisation. I learned some great sales skills there. I started as a sales merchandiser, so again, I used this idea of merchandising equipment as you went. And we saw lots of stuff. And that's where I was fortunate enough the company had signed, and they got some brilliant products in, and we saw product launches, and we saw all sorts of new stuff coming out. And one of the things I remember, we sat in this product demo, and when you look at something and you see a product launch and you go, that is going to be the biggest thing going. And I can just see this is going to be honestly, what it was, and I love this still, it still kind of absolutely resonates with me today, is it was an ironing board that was made of mesh, and it had 2 fans underneath.
Oh, wow.
And the 2 fans underneath sucked downwards, so when you put a garment on, it actually held a shirt in place, but it had the added benefit of when you kind of ran an iron across it with steam, it drew the steam through, so stuff ironed much more quickly.
Wow.
We didn't ever sell any of them, and it was an absolute flop. And I was like, oh my God, how could... And then they showed us this stupid silver and yellow vacuum cleaner that we were going to launch, which had this see-through bin, and by this guy called James Dyson. I looked at it and went, well, that's never going to sell, is it? So in terms of product launches, I was the man. I had my finger on the pulse. I thought the ironing board would be the thing, and it just wasn't. I mean, fair enough, we carried, I think, at one point up to 1 million different items, and Dyson was one of them. But yeah, we did the Dyson DC01 launch back in 90, whatever it was, 7-ish, I think, 98. And we had the independent rights for Dyson as a distributor for, I think, the first 3 or 6 months of its life. And it was a roaring failure at launch. Nobody wanted the thing.
Was that because of it's a change of mindset to go from a bag to a bagless?
Yeah, it is. I still look back and think this is fascinating. It was very different to everything else out there. You two clearly wouldn't remember things like Hoover Juniors, Hoover Seniors, which were kind of beige or kind of burgundy and plastic and just kind of just horrible things. And all of a sudden Dyson launches this silver and yellow and see-through, and it's like, oh my God, it's horrible. And then, of course, you had the issue. So you'd take it to a retailer and you'd talk them through it. Okay, so it doesn't have a bag. That's a bit weird. Okay, it's got filters. It looks horrible. It was actually quite loud in comparison to other vacuum cleaners. It made a lot of noise. And you kind of, okay. And then they go, and how much does it retail for? And you kind of go, oh, it retails for... So I didn't catch it. How much it retails for? No, you have to say that again. It's at £199. What, a pallet? No, each. Because the average price of a vacuum cleaner at the time, and it's amazing how these figures stick, was £71. So Hoover Juniors, Hoover Seniors, like 71 quid. And here you're rocking up with something that nobody quite likes yet, nobody's ever heard of. It's challenging what they think about, and it's 3 times the price. So it was fascinating. We really struggled at launch that nobody wanted to see it and use it. And it was only when we started demoing it, when people went from, oh my God, it's see-through, and you can see the dirt, that's horrible, to I remember, and it was... a shout out to Kirk and Tillich here in Scotland, 'cause that's where I was at the time. Kirk and Tillich, which is about as big as this room with a few shops. And we took a Dyson into the indoor market. That's how glamorous my job was. And the guy there was selling reconditioned Hoovers, because there were Hoovers. And I said to him, do me a favour. This horrible kind of oily rag that looks like a mat, just run your vacuum cleaner over it. And he did, his shop vacuum cleaner. And I went, let me show you the Dyson. And we went from a moment of, oh my God, it's horrible, you can see the dirt, to, oh my God, I can see all the dirt I've collected that my vacuum cleaner wouldn't, that my Hoover wouldn't. And it was like, it now makes sense. And I don't know entirely what this chap did. I'm assuming he's now retired a multi-millionaire, but he sold more Dysons out of this indoor market in Kirk and Tillich, which has a population of about 12. And there was a limited edition Dyson at launch, something called a De Stijl, which was I think the Dutch, I'm going to show my artistic flair here, Dutch artist,
Not clean.
And it had multi-colored Dyson, and he bought a pallet of them from me. They were a bit more expensive. They were £250 each at retail. I said, what are you going to do with them? He said, I'm going to put them in my loft. He said, because these will be collector's items one day. I'm like, yeah, right, really, yeah, go on. Brilliant. And if he did that, I'm assuming he's probably worth quite a lot of money now, because I imagine 24-box Dyson dish deals would be worth a few quid these days. But yeah, it was an interesting journey, the Dyson piece. I ended up, my wife and I both work for that same company. We met there, which was fantastic. And up until probably about 7 years ago, we were given every single model of Dyson. And we had lots and lots of Dyson products. Really, really, really loved them. Yeah.
I remember when my mum got one, and it was that thing of, I don't know if they were more powerful, but it was whatever we'd been hoovering with prior to that. All of a sudden, you run the Dyson to your house, and you're like, my God, this thing's full already.
Yeah, that was the bit.
It's like really, it's sucking down to partway through the Earth's core. It's like, where is all this dust
for the
coming
Dyson?
from?
Yes.
And it was
magma.
But there was that satisfaction element with the bag. It's like, oh, it's full. Where it's like, look at all this stuff that's spinning around. And
it is.
It's literally the only thing that doesn't, because I've got long hair that falls out lots, and the Dyson's the only thing that's ever been able to, I've not destroyed.
Yeah,
Far.
It's one of those things. It became one of those iconic products. There's always folks that don't like a product, and that's fine. But yeah, it was one of those really interesting products, and you saw its evolution and change. We went down to Malmesbury, and we saw James Dyson a few times, and we kind of, were there at the early days. It was really, really interesting to see how the company grew and progressed and where it's got to. And I think it was about a year ago we had to go and buy a Dyson, which was like, oh my God, we're going to buy a Dyson. It's like 350 quid. I was like, oh, hang on. How come? And you look, there's not many consumer products out there now that you look back and go, they've gone up in price and up in price and up in price. £71 back in 96, and they're now retailing, I think we paid 350 or 370 quid, whatever it was. And you go, that's crazy. When you look how much tellies were back then and how much tellies are now, it's like, tellies are just one step away from being given away with shreddies, as far as I can tell. It's like, how cheap can you make them? Yeah. Yes. Buy some shreddies, get a 42-inch telly.
The thing with tellies is that you buy one, and then a few months later you think, is that how much they're going for now?
Yes.
I remember buying it was probably about a 46-inch screen, and I spent an absolute fortune on it. And then the new technology comes out, and it's about, how much is that television? It's about a quarter of the price.
Yes, it's 3 times the size. And that's, and again, it fascinates me in terms of what we do in products and services, but it's just how marketplaces flex and change. I remember, with we sold a few tellies and stuff at PAC, not a lot, but a handful. But I remember at some of the trade shows, I remember seeing the first flat screen telly. And I probably wasn't, but it was like a Toshiba or somebody. But they had massive fans behind their stand to keep the thing cool because it got so hot. Wow, you couldn't let anybody anywhere near it to touch it because it was like glowing. Yes, it's like, please don't touch the telly. But it's like, oh my God, look at that, it's so flat. And it wasn't. It was like absolutely, it was huge. It was just kind of nailed to a wall with big fans behind it. But yeah, it's fascinating how consumer goods have changed. And everybody thinks of Dyson as a massive success, but we saw some stuff that didn't work. So people talk about the hand dryer. I don't like the hand dryer. The hand dryer is the worst thing I think he's made. Yeah, it's just not my thing. Certainly the vacuum cleaner, the hair dryer. We've got a Dyson fan. I really like my Dyson fan, but the Dyson wash machine didn't ever catch on.
No.
And it just you think he's got the magic touch, but he doesn't get everything right. And in terms of learning, you kind of go, actually, as a kind of a piece of learning, you can have some great hero products, and you can have all the R&D in the world, and you can have all the marketing kind of that you want, and all the budget. But it doesn't mean you get it right every time. No. I really quite like that.
It's good.
It's a good lesson, isn't it?
My hairdresser loves his Dyson hairdryer.
Oh, that's just, yeah.
It's like, Michelle, come in, I'll dry your hair. I'm like, no, stuff to do, Chris.
I'm just walking past.
I'm washing my hair.
I'm washing my hair. You can wash my hair.
Yes.
Cool. So.
Yes.
So moving on from PACT then.
Yeah.
Did you leave because the company was absorbed by RS, or was it time for a change?
No. It was an interesting time actually. I'd moved from a sales merchandiser's job to a full sales job up in on the west coast of Scotland. So I covered everywhere from the borders up to Isle of Lewis, Stornoway. So I had a great patch, just fantastic fun.
Better car?
Yeah, I'd moved up. I went through, and I'll explain why I went through company's cars a lot. We were just talking about this. I had a Polo 1.4 CL.
Okay.
And if anybody's online and listening to this, can I just encourage you to go and Google Polo pistachio green.
Oh, yuck.
Oh, it was fabulous. My wife's still mortified now. She had midnight blue, which was purple, really. And I had, and again, we almost had matching number plates, which was really weird. And then I progressed to a Rover 214.
Oh.
Which
Sexy cars.
it was hard to tell, actually. I spent so much time at the Rover garage that they knew me by first name. It's like, hi Neville, hi, what's it in for today? And you'd reel off this list of things that go, oh, that's fairly standard for them.
Yeah.
And I ended up with a Peugeot 306, which was really nice. I love my little Peugeot 306. But actually, it's a fabulous little car. And I lived in Glasgow, worked for Pact. My wife lived in, I'm going to say Stoke, but it was really Newcastle-under-Lyme. And so I used to do about 1,000 miles a week for business, and then used to drive down to Stoke to see her. So my boss couldn't work out why I went through company cars in about 18 months. Never, you seem to have done about 80,000 miles in 18 months. I don't know what's happening, boss. It's just,
working.
Yes, working really hard. And bringing the orders in.
Customers love me. I mean, figures don't lie.
I must admit, I had some really good bosses there. I remember phoning a boss one day, and I'd been in to see a particularly challenging customer. And I said, what would you say if I just hit a customer when I phoned my boss?
Oh.
And he said, he didn't pause. There was no pause. He just went, what's his turnover? I was like, not that big. And he went, oh, that's fine then. And I went,
go back and hit him again.
Yes. I said, I haven't hit him, but he said, oh. And it was just, and I kind of get, I probably was a bit upstarty, young salesperson. And this guy just, he and I just clearly did not get on. And he did that classic trick of when you're a rep, you walk into a shop and he says, I'll be with you in 5 minutes. And he leaves you there for like nearly 40. And it's like, no, I do need to kill you now. So, we learnt lots of stuff. I'd moved on from there. I was offered a job down in Stoke. I went to work for Phones for You. So they were based down there. James Caldwell had a lovely set of offices down there. Lovely, very, very, very interesting set of offices. And I worked there for about 9 months. I ran their entire inbound operation, which sounds grand, but it was 12 people because it was quite a small company at the time. I learnt lots there about what I don't like and what I do like in terms of managing people and responsibility, and decided to move on. Went to work for a greeting card company, which I loved. They were a really nice bunch of folks, and again, kind of sales, business development, account management, all that kind of stuff to get your teeth in. Really kind of enjoyable stuff. And then I decided to move on, and I applied for a job with BT. And BT interviewed me, and the job was in Manchester. I lived in Stoke, on Newcastle-under-Lyme. And that was fine because I could travel, and that's all great. And they phoned me back and said, great news, you've got the job. I said, that's fantastic. And it's in Newcastle. And I kind of went, what? I don't live in Newcastle, I live in Newcastle-under-Lyme. And they went, yeah, but you're a Geordie, aren't you? I'm sure you want to move home. And I went, no. Why would I want to move home? Because at the time, I had no aspirations of coming back to the North East. And my wife's company, because she'd moved on, had bizarrely had a vacancy in the North East. And they said, if you want to move, you can do. And I said, yes. And moved back to North East. And it was...
Yay for us.
Well... But I came back and I thought, you know what? It's only when you've been away from the North East for a little while, when you come back, you go... This is a really fantastic place to live. And I've done a lot of talking to folks on this over the last few years. It's the mix of friendly folks, things to do, scenery, how accessible everything is. And it's just, please don't tell too many folks. I don't want it too crowded.
No, I keep saying that.
It's a fantastic place to be, and why wouldn't you want to be here? And then as part of that, in 2002, we did the launch for BlackBerry. So BlackBerry landed, and again, we had exclusive rights at BT for BlackBerry. And again, that was just such a challenging launch because nobody wanted BlackBerry. And there's two things that really stand out. I remember at launch, anybody in the technology field will love this. I remember sat with an IT team, and they were like, well, this is the most uninspiring bit of kit we've ever seen, Nev.
Yep.
So I'm stood next to the head of IT and said, okay, tell you what, send me an email. So he pressed send on his computer. I stand next to him, and I kind of wait a bit and wait a few more, and he ping, there you go, I've got your email. How impressive is that? And he went, it only went 6 foot. What? He said, it's only gone 6 foot. And I went, that's not kind of quite the point. It's been right the way around the world to get this point. It's like, all right.
6 foot, yeah. It's like Bluetooth.
Yes. It's like, yeah, you must have known. So, and again, it was, and the standard piece we got told at any point with BlackBerry, and everybody said this was, who's ever going to want email on a phone? That's just not going to catch on. It's a lovely toy, it's a lovely gimmick, but nobody's ever going to want email on a phone. Yeah. And every time I look at folks now who are on email on a phone, I just think, that's just hilarious. Yeah. Absolutely hilarious.
It's like having a keyboard now on a phone, isn't it? Yeah. Instead of like trying to press to get the letter C, you're pressing 3 times to get a C, and then to just text someone.
Oh, no.
And it's...
No, I learnt with BlackBerry to type with thumbs really quickly. Thumbs was the way forward, the little BlackBerry keyboard. I still have the original BlackBerry. It's the first monochrome BlackBerry in a box with its invoice and all the bits that go with it. Yeah. Or I like to call it my retirement plan. That's what's there. And again, it was just a nice bunch of folks. I worked my way through BT, and I suppose I ended up at one point. I was involved with some quite big technology teams, global services, looking after all the business divisions, and supporting in terms of account management and technical specialists. Not that I was a technical person at all, but I put together a team of 12 sales coaches, and we had 400 and something people in Newcastle, Bristol, and Birmingham, and we had a £963 million target to hit, and I think we achieved about 1.1 billion. And we put together this coaching program, and I suddenly thought, well, do you know what? I quite like this sales coaching stuff. This is quite me. I quite enjoy this kind of unlocking potential in other people. That's really quite nice. And then I ended up for BT in a position where I looked after BT franchises, because they're not quite a franchise. There's almost a licensee of BT. And I covered an area from Hull to Liverpool to Aberdeen. It got a bit much.
Wow. Yeah.
It was a bit of travelling. I think it was a day...
Like the north.
Yes. It's like, how far do you want to travel? My boss at the time, I remember he phoned me, and my boss was fantastic. I had one of the best bosses when I left BT. And he phoned me one day and said, Nev, do me a favour. Yeah. Just pop to Aberdeen. Well, hang on. Just stop for 2 seconds. No, can you just pop to Aberdeen?
There's no popping.
There is no pop to Aberdeen. I said, next time you are up, we'll pop to Aberdeen for the day and see how you feel.
You can fly, can't you?
Yeah, you can. I've never been a big fan of flying. Okay. When I lived in Scotland, I shared a flat with a guy who was an engineer at Glasgow Airport.
Don't do flying, no.
Yeah, he really put me off flying. Yes. And actually, when I was up there, I used to drive 4 hours to a ferry to get to Stornoway, which was a 4-hour ferry trip, rather than fly. Even though I lived next to Glasgow Airport in Paisley, I would rather drive and ferry than fly. And when asked about this, I was always said, I can swim away from a ferry, I can't fly away from a plane. Yes. Which I've always kind of stuck with, really. But now I'm fine with flying, but no, we did a lot of travelling. And, I know you talked to some of your previous guests about pivotal moments, and there was a specific moment that stands out to me when I was up in Edinburgh, and I didn't have to start too early in the morning, and I'm in a hotel, I think it was the Mercure, almost a brand new hotel at Edinburgh Airport, and it's about 8 in the morning, I'm in the pool, and BT have just given me a nice company car. They've given me a BMW 3 Series convertible, which is fantastic. Fairly rare at the time. I'm like, wow, I'm it. I'm on expenses. I've got shares. I've got this fantastic pension. I'm on a really good salary. I get a fantastic bonus. And I'm just, when you're having that moment of life is good, and I'm swimming at this pool going, I'm not stressed. I'm due in the office soon. And I thought, isn't life, we've got all these things around me, and isn't this fantastic? And I hit the end of the pool and turned around and thought, yeah, but I don't like it though. And I just this horrible, unshakable feeling of, yeah, well, that's lovely, but I don't kind of quite like it. And I couldn't put my finger on it. And I remember, I was really cheeky. I used to put the roof down in the car and switch my phone off, because obviously you can't take phone calls. And I had to drive across the tops from Edinburgh back home. And I arrived back home to Mrs. Tynemouth, and I said to her, I've had a big thing, and I don't think I'm enjoying work. And she went, yeah, no, it's really obvious.
To everyone else,
yes, apart from me, which is often the way, isn't it? Because you can't say this stuff yourself sometimes. And I said, "What do you think I should do?" She went, "Just leave." And that's it. We've always had this kind of real, kind of great communication between us. It's like, why don't you just leave? I thought, yeah, you're right. And I did, and I took the decision I took. I was fairly fortunate that BT offered redundancy virtually every year. BT just promoted me to a director position, which was fantastic. They couldn't pay me, which was a big headache. They offered me the job and then said, we can't actually pay you for this or give you the title. Like, all right, okay, that's very interesting. And then I put in for voluntary redundancy, and I was told no. When I asked why, they went, oh, you're too valuable.
Too expensive.
It's like, hang on, what?
Pay, yeah.
Yes, do you want me to do the job or do you want me to leave? And eventually they messaged me and said, on a Saturday morning, 8 o'clock, and said, your last day will be next Friday.
Oh, wow.
And that was it. That was it. Left BT. Left a great bunch of folks, a really nice place to work, and left a lovely BMW convertible with them, which still breaks my heart.
It's fine.
It would have leaked eventually, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
I'm kidding.
Did you have indicators on your BMW now?
Oh, that's hard.
Oh, that's
Well, actually, can I bring you full circle?
Yeah,
Because
go on then.
this is something that I'm going to bring you full circle now. 2 years ago, I bought the identical car.
Oh, wow.
I can't afford it still, but I bought it because I'm going to buy the with a slightly bigger engine to go a little bit quicker. And I make an absolute point when I drive it down, especially when the roof's down in it. I make an absolute point if anybody is waiting to get out of any junction, I let them out. Wow. Do you know why? Because I want them to go home. You'll never guess what happened today. I was driving this guy in a BMW. Yeah, he let me out. It's like, oh.
So it's probably a higher car or something. You know?
I can imagine the conversations over dinner, especially if like white van man in a transit van. You'll never guess what this BMW did today. Well, he let me out. It's like, oh.
And you do indicate?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, wow.
I have a real thing, and I suppose it's driving so much mileage, and a few years ago, Mrs. Tynemouth, not me, this is Mrs. Tynemouth, decided she wanted to learn to ride a motorbike. Oh, wow. And all my friends had motorbikes, and I did not want a bike. But I thought, I can't really sit in the back. I'd feel that would just be weird. So I went to do my bike test, and I'm fairly fortunate. I've had a lot of cars. I've driven a lot of different situations. I've raced a bit. I've driven old cars, classics, off-roaders, lots of stuff. And I consider myself a good driver. The only reason I consider myself a good driver is people often get out of my car and say, actually, you're a really good, safe, knowledgeable driver. You know, we've done some regular driving trips. So 2 months ago, when I see my nephew in Italy, we did, I think it was 2,800-mile round trip in 10 days. So me and Mrs. Tynemouth do like to get behind the wheel and just drive. Yes.
Yeah, I like driving.
Yes.
I've got my eye on one of those. I won't say the name, but there's a company where you sign up for something like 7 or 8 days, and they go to Spain, they go to Italy, and everyone drives a Lamborghini, a Ferrari, a Porsche, an Aston Martin, whatever it is, and you literally, part of the pleasure of the day is you're on a windy road, and then you all stay in this lovely location, have dinner and wine, and so yeah, I've got to save up for one of those, I think. Yeah,
we were inspired a few years ago when we did the. It's a bit sad, but it was when I had the BMW convertible with BT when Top Gear did the best driving roads in Europe. We went and mapped that, and that's what we did. And we've done that a few times. We did about 3 years ago. Nick's nephew was in the States graduating, so we went to see him there. And we did the vast majority of Route 66 in a Mustang convertible.
Fantastic.
So cool.
Yeah, but that's what we enjoy. That's and we I think I'm right in saying we work really, really hard, and it's really important to me that when you do take downtime, you do the stuff that's really important to you, and that's kind of really important. Yeah,
it definitely is. That's got me thinking. Now we need an Inspiration North
road trip to Italy.
Somewhere, yeah.
I'll drive. I don't mind driving. If you just yes, where we're going.
Yeah, that's good.
Hire Yeah, I've
got tunes.
But honestly, it's one of the things that and I often find this in work, and I've always done this. If I'm really stuck, I either like to go for a walk to clear my head, or I'll just go for a drive. I'll quite happily just get in the car and drive. And I have done from being a kid. Right the way through to now. It's just it's one of those places where I can kind of find some peace, and I can find a bit of time in a kind of constantly connected world. It's nice when you can switch everything off in the car and not be bothered by folks. So yeah, that's my thing. That's absolutely my thing.
So when you decided, right, I'm done. Did you have a plan with what you do next, or was it kind of like let's roll with it and see what happens?
We talked about a few things actually. You roll with it, driving trip. Oh, that's really poor. Sorry,
that's an awful pun, and I wasn't even intentional.
I couldn't say I was that driven at the time. I couldn't quite see the road to success.
But you were changing gear, so where did you?
Yeah. It was
Dad jokes.
It was a sharp turn in my career, and round about that time,
oh dear me.
Round about that, is that okay?
What did I do? I started something I can't take back.
So you were deflated about working in the telecom sector.
Not entirely tired, but exhausted certainly. Yes.
So
I'll stop with the car jokes now.
So So you change direction to find a new road, a new route.
Yes. Well, I think it's always you sort of map things out
Did you
and
put
understand where you're going.
Did you have a destination in the GPS for the next step? Or
Actually, we've joked on there. One of the things that we talked about, and this is how sad things are, we'd actually spent one holiday talking about various different businesses. And are you guys familiar with the relatively new KFC on Felling Bypass?
Yes.
So the flags the other day.
Yes. So that used to be a petrol station. Do you remember? Yes.
I knew it wasn't always there.
Yeah.
My
Yes.
little boy was like, yes, it's been there for ages. I'm like, no, it hasn't.
Yes. It used to be a petrol station and shut down. There was nothing there for ages. We saw that site, and actually my wife and I spent one holiday mapping out how we should buy that and open a biodiesel company. Because and it just
Like you do.
Yeah. Because that was our holiday. It's like, oh my God, what have we done? But no, I kind of reflected on the things that I really enjoyed and the stuff that I love. I always love sales because that's, go back to 13 and knocking on people's doors. Well, that was just sales. And the stuff I'd done with BT, and I really loved inspiring and helping and supporting others, and thought, actually, there's got to be something there that fits for me. And that was the bit. And something went, actually, lots of bits of jigsaw fit in, and I decided that I wanted to start, I'd started, it's changed now in terms of names, but we started New Results Training back in 2010. And I decided that was the path for me. I really want to kind of help and support and you kind of develop those around me and help people get better at selling and business development. Yes.
How do you go from then a behemoth of corporations, because BT, there's a lot of people work there, to
it's not really. There are loads.
to going to set my own business up, and then it's like there's no IT department to call anymore when the laptop doesn't work, and you do your own printing, and you what's that step like?
That was massive, and it was really quite strange at first. And I had a conversation with somebody the other day who's just started their business, and we had a very similar conversation. We had when you kind of just click with somebody, actually, yeah. And I remember this vividly. So I'd only been running the business 10 days, 2 weeks. Remember walking around the co-op around the corner from the house to buy something. I'm thinking, I shouldn't be doing this. I feel really guilty about being out in the middle of the day and kind of buying some milk. It's like all of a sudden it was like, but you'd almost been bred in that mentality of it's 9 to 5, you should be doing stuff rather than actually stepping back and working when kind of suits you. Yeah. The biggest challenge I had, so 28th of February 2010, still employed by BT, I was in the pub. It was my brother-in-law's birthday, 40th, must have been, yes. And he was a chef, so we decided he'd booked to go to the Fat Duck, Heston Blumenthal's restaurant. Right. I said, listen, I always wanted to go there. Can we tag along? And it just happened to coincide that ended up being my last day at BT. And I was dealing with a really interesting guy who had a really early version of what is now kind of Uber. It wasn't. It was completely. It hasn't morphed into Uber, but he had something like Uber running back in 2010. He just couldn't. He had 20,000 taxis connected across Europe. He just didn't know what to do with them. They didn't want to talk to him because that's not going to work. Again, that theme keeps coming through. And we'd done a few deals with them, and I remember being on a conference call, and it was a really big deal. It was probably worth, I don't know, in total for BT, a couple of million quid. I remember, and we almost reached the end of the point where I knew the customer really well. My boss was on then me, and I just reached a point where I went, guys, can we just stop messing around? Can we just do this deal? Are we going to, Dan, my boss, Dan, can we do this? Yeah, we can. Farah, customer, can we? Yeah, great. And we just went off, and I just remember coming off that call, why are we messing about this £2 million deal? But then fast forward a couple of weeks when I had to pitch a couple of £100, and that's all it was, a couple of £100 for the first bit of training I delivered. I struggled. And it's fun. And this is one of the bits that I found, the mindset shift you go between being an employee and having this big, not just behemoth in terms of support and team around you, but when you almost have to justify your own value rather than value an organisation that is a behemoth, because that's dead easy. Well, it's £2 million, it's BT. Yeah. But actually £250 for New Results Training, and you've never heard of me, that's a challenge.
You've no longer got the brand behind you, have you? You're building that. So.
And none of my experience or ideas or thoughts had changed. It's just that emotional association of it. All of a sudden, it's you. And it's like, oh my God, how do we... And I share that story, and I share it with entrepreneurs regularly and in other groups, because lots of folks don't like to admit, but honestly, that's the moment I felt myself in. It was a struggle at first. It took me a long time to disassociate myself with the company and say the company charges that much, or we charge that much, or now I'm quite happy saying I charge that much, because we're really worth it. This is what we give. This is what we deliver. But it takes a bit of time and confidence building to get there. So we started off as a training company. We work with lots of different organisations, and God, that was 9 years ago now. Time does flip and fly.
And did you set that up with your partner, obviously?
No. Set it up as a sole trader.
Okay.
So it was just myself. I thought I'll go and take the world by myself because that's how you do. Well,
do that.
Yes, I can run this multi-million-pound organisation right the way around the globe, just me. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and quickly realised that you don't have the support behind you, the team or all the bits. So Mrs. T was still employed, still doing what she did. And we had a conversation one day about, well, actually, why didn't she become part of the business? And she said, yeah, and which is good.
She said yes for the second time.
Yes.
Sorry.
Only the second time, yes. Yes, dragged her along on this adventure. And we started, and she joined the business. And then not long after that, we brought in a third director. So I met Mike Lever, who's the third director in the business now. And we shifted the business from being new results training, because we weren't just doing training, to new results. And that's how it sits today. 3 directors, myself, my wife Nick, and Mike Lever. And I still can't, and Mike and I often have this conversation. There's 3 directors, which means we get 1 vote each. We still can't work out. There are times when Mike and I vote on stuff in one way, and Nick will go, "Nah, you're not having that," and it just doesn't happen. It's like
the motion carries.
How does that kind of happen? And yes. And the interesting thing is, it's it's an interesting dynamic when you work with the other half. That you can cut through an awful lot of rubbish and get straight to the point, but it's challenging. Because then sometimes you can cut through all the rubbish and get to the point, which means there might be a payback later in the evening when you're outside of work. Because it's it is that it's really hard.
You can make your own dinner.
Exactly. Yes, your dinner's in the dog. Okay. And we don't even have a dog. That's how bad it is. It would be the next door's dog. Yes. I've had to borrow a dog to feed your dinner too. And that could be either of us. It's always a challenge. And I think the other interesting piece is with 3 directors, it creates that little piece. So, if Nick ends up between Mike and I, it's very difficult for her to know which way to land because, she doesn't want to be seen to be landing on my side. So I think very often she leans towards, Mike, or she's very careful about how she kind of positions what she does. But I say if Mike and I just try and gang up, then it just doesn't work.
He's like, nah.
Yeah,
He gets 2 votes in that one.
Yes,
3.
I remember Mike tells a story. I tell a story when we had a vote in the office one day that we'd have some nice those posh office chairs that were actually car chairs. We'd found some lovely ones that matched our brand. And it was fantastic. Mike and I decided this is what we're going to do, and we said, Nick, can we order these? She went, no. And that was there's no discussion, there's no kind of, and there's 2 of us going, I'm sure we should be able to organise this somewhere between us, but no, definitely not.
That's great though. Perfect.
Oh, I'm pleased somebody does it. I find it a challenge.
So what are the sort of typical areas that you're helping companies with?
That's morphed and changed, and I suppose that's a reflection of how we've grown as a business and what we've done. So we do everything that you might consider around sales. So whether you talk about people moving in from a service role, so we do a lot of service delivery at the minute. People transitioning from a bit of a service role to a sales role. And then we do kind of account management pieces. Winning larger clients is always fascinating, that account management and development piece. And then we do some one-to-one support for business owners and senior leaders within sales organisations. We do a lot of coaching. But we've developed some very specific material ourselves, which is really fascinating. So I have to be careful I say this with Michelle in the room. I'll not look at her. There you go. I'll just ignore Michelle when I say this. But the psychology of consumer and seller behaviour is a big piece for us now in terms of we're really keen to understand. And Mike's great because he does a lot of research around, he's done a lot of work around psychology and the neuroeconomics piece. So just understanding how our brain works in some situations. And I find this piece fascinating. So we work with a lot of very small businesses, so startups. So we do a lot of work with local universities and help with pitching and startup business and entrepreneurs because that's really rewarding. And we deal with some really massive global players where we train some of their sales teams in account management or development. And at the minute, we seem to have this real focus and a lot of work around professional services. So we do a lot of work with accountants and lawyers, solicitors, estate agents, recruitment. There's a lot of stuff in that keeps us really busy, and we find that extremely rewarding when we're able to help somebody who doesn't think that we'll be able to bring something new and exciting to their business, and we let them see the customer or their client in a very, very different way.
What was the biggest thing you had to learn in order to shift from that sort of BT looked after, here's your car, here's your salary, to oh no, I have to generate all my own money, and I don't know why I've gone a bit Scottish/Irish. Oh no,
that's not even close to an accent. I'm going to be honest. That's a bit of feedback there.
James is the one with the accent, so it's fine.
We'll get to that next.
Yes,
what was the biggest shift? I suppose there's a mindset shift, and it's that agility. There was one particular time in BT where I was cornered, and I do mean this quite literally, cornered into signing a contract which I really didn't want to sign. And I don't mean for me personally, I mean on behalf of the organisation. I also think I've got quite a strong moral compass. And I remember my manager at the time, I contacted her and had a big discussion, and she was very forthright, and it would be signed. And I was given kind of no wriggle room at all. You will sign that contract. And it was a couple of £1 million. It was for a local organisation. Didn't ever generate a single penny in business for BT. And I remember being absolutely frustrated being cornered. And fast forward to new results, I remember being offered an opportunity, and I really wasn't sure about it. And I looked at it really quite hard and thought, should we, shouldn't we, shouldn't we? And I said to Mike, can we go and meet these folks and do an observation and see what they're like? And I said, I didn't tell him because I don't like to kind of sway his decision, but I just said, let's review these folks. And we were at a particularly challenging time in the business, an early stage of growth, and we had no money in the bank account. And when your wife is part of the same business drawing the same salary, and if there's no salary to draw on, that's quite tough. And we had this quite tough situation, and we had this massive opportunity. And I remember going to this organisation, sitting in this lovely glass boardroom with the directors, and we had a conversation. So, okay, the next stage is we want to go and see the team and sit with them and see what's what. And the director said, let's go off and organise that. We'll leave you the cup of tea. We'll be back in 5 minutes. And my phone pinged. Oh, well, there's nobody else in the room other than Mike and I, who are sat other sides of a really big board table in this really posh room. I thought, that's strange. It's a text from Mike. Why would Mike text me when he sat across there? And I'm looking at him, there's nobody else in the room. And it was just one word, and the one word was no. And I nodded, and I kind of, yeah, you're absolutely right. I had this bad feeling, which is why I'd take them there. And despite the fact the business bank account at that point was empty, we walked away from a significant, probably would have been a 12 or an 18-month contract. And it was really challenging. It really tested your morals and your values to say at that point where there's no money, in the bank account, I know I'm not getting paid. I know Mrs. Tynemouth's not getting paid. And it's just a massive challenge to go, no, but the right thing to do is to walk away. And I look back on that, and again, I think that's the pivotal piece for me. It's that ability to say no to stuff and that ability to say yes to stuff. So sometimes, take BT as an example, there are opportunities that I had to walk by at BT because it wasn't part of BT's strategy or goal, or I just didn't have the authority to say, let's go and do whatever we want to do. At New Results, if we spot something good we want to go and do, we go and do it. And that's a fantastic bit.
Such fun, isn't it?
It is. Yes.
Let's do that.
Yes. Quick.
Let's set up a podcast,
There's not the hierarchy, the hoops to jump through, the same politics as in a big firm.
No, so. and there's a time at BT where there was, I remember BT loved an all hands conference call, and let's get 400 people on a call and let's brief this out. And there was a particular business decision that had been made, and I disagreed with it. And I'm not going to say what it was because it's a little bit kind of challenging. And I remember on the call, and this sort of board member of BT said, okay, this is what we're doing, and briefed it all out. Questions, silence. And there's 400, 500, probably more than that, probably about 1,000 people on the call. And I remember I suddenly found myself saying, I've got a question, well, not a question, bit of feedback. I completely disagree with this business decision. And I remember I got torn apart by that board director on that call in front of everybody. About he told me I didn't understand my customers, I didn't understand the business, I didn't understand the whole thing, and within 6 months he was sacked, and that business decision was reversed. And most of my peers on the call came to me afterwards saying, "Yeah, that's exactly the right thing to say," but nobody would say it.
No.
And I found that, and again, you look back on pivotal moments and go, that's one of the ones where you go, yeah, that just tells me. And there was some brilliant managers and some really clever stuff done at BT that was, I had a great time, but there's one or two little bits, like in any organisation, where you go, no, that was a moment of, I don't need to be here anymore. That's a big piece for me. And I suppose now, so you guys have decide, let's do a podcast. I love that. And we've done, one of the things we realised is we have a certain reach, we have a certain kind of capacity to kind of help and serve others. And we're reaching our limit of that now, which is fantastic. So we're on a journey at the minute to create digital licenses of everything that we do. So organisations now can go to our website and download our training material, trainers' notes, handouts, workbooks, because we want other people to go and train this stuff out. And we've now got available online courses so folks can get access to our material but don't need us in the room. And this is a great kind of complementary piece to what we already do. It kind of fits really well because some of the professional services we work with, it's a challenge when we say to them, I need you in half a day to talk about LinkedIn, or half a day to talk about building trust, or half a day to talk about networking skills, because they just don't have time. Asking a solicitor to take half a day to do some training and development is like, what? That's billable time. Huh? They all think in 6-minute chunks or 10-minute chunks. It's like, I can't possibly. You know how many 6-minute chunks there are in a half a day? No, let me get the calculator and work it out.
Go to the loo.
Yes. I'm surprised they haven't got that timed either. So again, we're recognising we evolve and develop. And I think the nice thing is, I think it's a learning journey. It still amazes me how much stuff I've learned along the way. And I think, and again, this is my employed days. At BT, when I used to look after a lot of different accounts, there was, actually, no, even before BT, way back in Pact days, I can remember the phrase that you've probably both heard, turnover is vanity, profit is sanity, and cash is king. And I could sit with anybody and tell them this. And it's only when you run your own business that you realise what that really means. And it was years ago now, but I remember sat in the office after a really busy period, doing some admin, and just saying to Nick, my wife, okay, I'm gonna order a stapler and a hole punch. Oh, no, you can't do that. What do you mean I can't do that? Well, there's no money in the bank account. Well, there must be money. I've been working really hard. Yeah, nobody's paid us yet. And you suddenly go, oh my God. And that's when you realise there's a massive difference between working hard, being paid, and doing the right stuff. So, I learned that lesson really quickly. And whenever I speak to entrepreneurs or anybody who's thinking about starting their own business, I always say, you need to get that bit right. Understand the money, because that's a really important piece. Big learning points.
Definitely.
So from all of that, with all the experiences, what would you say is perhaps the biggest piece of learning that's come out of that?
It's really interesting because you pick up lots of information along the way. You pick up lots of stuff that's really relevant and useful and really challenges the way that you think. I love when people challenge me in the way that I think. And I remember attending a course at BT, and it was down at Keele University. Keele University. Went down there, and we had a trainer in the room, and there was a mix of people around the table. Engineers, technical teams. I was one of the senior managers there. Just lots of folks in the room, kind of talk about lots of different stuff. And there was 2 engineers complaining about how bad BT was, which was kind of a standard thing. How bad the vans were these days, and how many jobs. It's just this was before BT got split up into Openreach and BT. And the trainer was there. It was nothing to do with the session, but he was just preparing a flip chart, and he wrote something on a flip chart and turned it round. Do you know what? I am ashamed to say I can't remember his name, because I didn't realise just how relevant this would be in my life. But he turned around a flip chart and said to these 2 engineers, just read that. And the thing in the flip chart said, there is nothing in life you have to do. And these 2 engineers went, oh, hang on, there's loads of stuff you've got to do. and there's generally folks kind of spot stuff. Oh, you've got to do this, you've got to do that. And at the time, I think I pushed back, there's loads of stuff. You need to pay taxes, you need to do this, you need to do that. And he said, actually, no, there's not. And we kind of went, oh, that's ridiculous. And he said to these 2 engineers, if life at BT is so bad, why don't you guys just leave? And they went, oh, well, actually, there's the pension, there's this, and there's that, and there's jobs. Okay, so let's just stop whinging about stuff and let's understand some of the things that are practical. And he kind of wrote that expression, and I thought, oh, that's interesting. It's one of those little things that gets tucked in your memory bank. You go, oh, I'll have that for somewhere later on. And I suddenly started realising, so the point where I left BT, that was a moment where there's nothing in life you have to do. I have this great job. From the outside, all these things, all the trappings that people kind of really aim for, but I wasn't enjoying it. And there is nothing in life you have to do became a moment of, well, I can just quit. I can go and do something else. And from a personal perspective and a business perspective, what I'm finding more and more and more is I can lean on this expression to say there genuinely is nothing in life you have to do. And what I help people with these days is I often tell them that I start with that expression, nothing in life you have to do, but then say it's all about behavioural choice. So when we choose to do things that we get consequences, And if people aren't liking consequences, we need to look at the choices that we're making that lead us to this point. And it's amazing how many folks don't want to take ownership of their consequences, let alone their behaviour. And that's fascinating. And actually somebody challenged me a few years ago now and said to me, do you know what, Neville? You are exactly where you deserve to be in life. I went, oh, that's interesting. How's that? I said, well, with all the opportunities you've had and all the challenges that you've had, however you've chosen to respond to them, whatever your behaviour has been, has led you to this point today. So you're exactly where you deserve to be. And I suddenly thought, that's really interesting. So one of the things that I'm really passionate about, and I got really excited about this, and I tend, if I speak, I tend to lead with this now. It tends to be the opening line for a lot of talks because it does challenge people. It makes people sit up and think. And I think, and go right the way back to our first part of the conversation about kids at school and, you know, starting a job, or sorry, going into employment or starting a business. Well, actually, it's that there's nothing in life you have to do. Your choices are your choices, and let's go make them, and let's get some consequences and see where we go. I find that I live by this expression from a personal perspective. There's lots of things I like to do that are challenging and outside of my comfort zones. So, you know, I mentioned to you guys a while ago that I ran a radio show for a while, completely outside my comfort zone. Had a whale of a time, ran it for about 9 months, learned how to drive all the desk and queue stuff up, and I think I lost the news once or twice, which was very embarrassing. Can't find the news. Who's got the news? Yes, which is really, really awkward.
Ring in with some news.
And the speaking was a step outside of my comfort zones when I first started doing that, probably 8-9 years ago, and I really love that now. I love being challenged and stretched with that piece. I've recently signed up to do some stand-up comedy. That's another really big stretch for me. And I've started taking some singing lessons. I'm just desperate to try stuff that challenges and stretches me. In the racing, when I raced a car with Mrs. Tynemouth, who was much better than me, by the way, and has more trophies, and she will definitely confirm that. It was a choice to go, do you know what? There are some things that are really important to me in life. And there are folks who don't always get an opportunity to do what they want. And it's not because it's not within their reach. It's just they don't realise what they want to achieve and what their goals are and where they want to be. And they just end up drifting. We all do it. I've drifted long enough. You know, I've drifted at BT. I've drifted in different jobs. I've drifted personally. But when you start thinking about what you really want and getting some focus and getting some goals and then moving towards them, it's amazing what fantastic stuff happens. And, you know, hey, 6 months ago, I got so excited by There Is Nothing in Life You Have to Do. I decided to have my first ever tattoo, and I've had a tattoo down my arm. So when I get up every day, I can go, it's there. It reminds me every single day of the things that... Because every day you kind of go... and I think that's the bit. Folks end up in jobs or doing things or running a business. And we've always said if you get up and you have 3 days in a row where you go, nah, I don't want to do this. Well, you shouldn't be there. You shouldn't be running the business. You shouldn't be employed. You shouldn't be doing that thing if you reach that point. And that, honestly, I decided to have it put down my arm because it just reminds me every single day that what I'm doing that day is my choice. So today's podcast was a choice. I could have stayed at home. I could have taken the morning off. I could have gone to see some customers and anything else. But you know what? And this isn't as cheesy as it sounds. I really wanted to be here today. Therefore, I chose to be here and work with you guys in this moment to do this. And I think that's the fun bit.
Absolutely.
So bearing in mind all that advice, if we could go back to your younger Neville, or the younger Neville, I should say.
Getting your DeLorean, because you didn't.
We'll get the DeLorean out.
Absolutely, yes.
Although I saw there was a video. Was it yesterday? Tesla are bringing out.
Oh yes, you sent me that.
DeLorean inspired. I'll have to send you that link.
Okay, yes.
DeLorean inspired Tesla.
Okay.
It
just looks like a Tesla. They've put some, like boxes on. Looks like.
Doesn't look as boxy as the original DeLorean, but looks pretty cool.
I think it's going to be. I think there'll be a Back to the Future 4 then. I think maybe. Yeah. That'd be fun, wouldn't it?
In the Tesla, yes.
Yeah.
So take you back to younger Neville, 16, 18. What sort of advice do you think you might give to yourself?
I kind of wish I'd got more of that. There's nothing in life you have to do. Spirit and attitude back then. So it's always hard because you have to go through some failures and falling over, and you have to collect some scars to make you the people that you are. And that's the bit for me, I suppose. But if I was to go back, I wish I'd understood more about making some better choices, getting a little more focused. I drifted a long time, and I didn't think enough about the stuff. But I'm not entirely certain at 18 you want to think about stuff. You just want to go out and have fun and be sociable, engage, and do all that kind of the stuff that you need to do to make you the people that you are. But and there's a bit of research I've read recently around encouraging people with very specific language to work hard. I think one of the things that I recognise is I became a little lazy. I kind of thought stuff came easily. It didn't. You've got to keep working hard. And I reached a couple of points, probably at school and at university, where I stopped working hard. And occasionally, a few years ago, I caught myself perhaps not working as hard as I should at the business, and going, actually, no, it only comes when you work hard. So I think going back and saying to myself, nothing in life you have to do. I wouldn't listen to me, but yeah, I would have given that advice.
You said whatever.
Yeah, like I'm going to listen to that.
Go away, you old person.
Yeah, because you don't, and it's really hard. We don't have kids, but with my nieces and nephews, I try not quite that expression, but I'm trying to have some conversations to say, really, your aspirations and. I've tried to kind of guide them in a few directions. They want to travel, but that they're more passionate and enthusiastic about, and less kind of outcome oriented in terms of money or whatever it might be. Because I think at that age, you think the money's what it's all about. Yeah. And while money's lovely and it might buy you a Tesla that looks like a DeLorean, if that's what you want, if that's what floats your boat. I think a lot of us get wrapped up and just forget there are some brilliant things to achieve in life that aren't money based, and I think that's where we go wrong. So I think work hard, have fun, and I've always been really keen. I mentioned this a few times. I think it's really important that we do have fun. And I think at times I got a little too wrapped up and a little too serious, and perhaps working hard, having fun, nothing in life you have to do. And don't be afraid to get outside your comfort zones. I think at times I was worried what other people thought, and I was worried about pleasing everybody around me, which again I think at 18,
Can't.
No, you kind of go, everybody's gonna be happy around me, and you just can't. And I think letting go of that responsibility and saying, do you know what, I'm going to make some people really happy and some people happy, and other folks aren't going to like me, and I'm quite cool with that. Not everybody likes me, and hey, do you know what? That's probably okay.
That's wonderful. Excellent. So somebody listening goes, ooh, like the sound of that, Neville.
Really? Is that going to happen?
Maybe.
Okay.
How's the best way? What's the best platform to catch you on?
Well, because of my background in technology and communications, I like to be at the absolute cutting edge. So if folks would like to send me a fax, my fax number is... No, not good. Okay, perhaps not. Probably the best bet, and I haven't mentioned these bits, but yeah, I did write a book a few years ago on LinkedIn, so I am a bit of a fan of LinkedIn, I suppose. Best mention that at some point. LinkedIn's always a great place to find me. Nevil Tynemouth. The only downside is I have a brother who is Neil Tynemouth. So if you find a Neil Tynemouth that looks like a Nevil Tynemouth, that's not me. But he will respond to your message really nicely. He's polite, don't worry. But yeah, look for Nevil Tynemouth, and I am just evil with an N on the front. So my parents we're from South Shields, we couldn't afford all the letters for Neville. So I'm just Nevil, evil with an N on the front. Or failing that, Twitter, Nev New Results, or go to the New Results website and ping us a message via there. We're kind of fairly accessible, fairly easy. I was going to say find me on TikTok, but I'm not on TikTok. I just want to sound cool and down with the kids.
I don't even know what TikTok is.
Yeah.
Oh,
yeah.
James knows.
Oh, hey, yes.
I think I downloaded it, but I've not used it.
Yes. All the kids are on TikTok these days. I have no idea.
Is it like the new Snapchat?
Ask me one on sport. God, I don't know. It's a Snapchat. Yes. Probably yes.
Next question.
Yes. Pass. That's a pass from me. No, so you're fairly accessible. Yeah, just give us a shout on any of the kind of social platforms you'll find us on. Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter, website, fax. Fax good. Letter. Send me a letter. Nobody sends me letters. Write me a letter. That's weird, but yes, go on.
Cool. Well,
Great.
Thank you ever so much for allowing us to come and visit your offices today.
No, thank you guys for coming along. Really appreciate it. Thank you.
Thanks. Thanks everyone for listening. Check out all the show notes at inspirationnorth.com. Join us again for the next episode when we'll be chatting to another inspirational person. If you like this, subscribe and tell your friends. If you didn't like this, subscribe anyway and tell everybody.